Welcome, everyone, and thanks for coming to the last block of the workshops from today. Good to see some names already that have been in previous sessions. For folks who were joining us in the morning, I hope you've enjoyed the summit so far. There's been a lot of information, so just remember that all sessions are recorded, so you can next week you can kind of come back and look at what resources have been shared and review some of these sessions. Today's session will be led by Desiree Caldwell, who will share innovative approaches to assessment. And there's going to be a lot of amazing examples in this session, so take notes. We will also have the slides so you can review them. I believe Desiree's insights will benefit you no matter what discipline you're teaching or how big of a class. There is a lot of kind of variety of examples, and feel free to post your own examples in the chat as well. The chat will be active. Feel free to post questions. Like in our classes, the more we put in, the more we take. So feel free to jump in with your own insights and ask some questions. We will have some time for questions at the very end of the session. Desiree, thank you so much for being our speaker today and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I seen where a lot of you are from a hot weathered place like me. It's over almost 98 degrees here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I'm glad everybody else is feeling the heat as well and humidity. So thank you for coming. This session is effective assessment strategies in the asynchronous online classroom. And that is specifically the type of program I teach in, but all of the strategies that we use in our program can be adapted to either in-person modality or online synchronous modality. It's really however you make it. But that our program is asynchronous online. If you need to turn on the captions, here are the directions for how to do that and a little picture there so you know exactly where to go. And then our agenda for the session is I'm going to give a little introduction about myself. We're going to talk about the role of assessments in online learning, and I'm going to provide you with various strategies that we use in our program, and then we'll do a wrap up. So who am I? So I currently am an assistant professor. I teach at Gwinnett Mercy University in Pennsylvania. It's in Gwinnett Valley. And I'm also an alumni there. I got my bachelor's degree there. And I started out as an adjunct, and you'll see was also an online adjunct instructor in this program before leaving the elementary and middle school classroom to be full-time professor once I got my doctorate. So I taught at the elementary level in second grade and fifth grade, and then at the middle school level, sixth grade and eighth grade ELA. I had taught for 15 years before coming to Gwinnett full time. And our program, like I said, is asynchronous online and it's accelerated. So classes run every 7 weeks. I'm also a DJ. I have my own DJ business. My DJ name is DJ P. Leia for Princess Leia. It's been my nickname my whole life, so I went with it. And my headphones have Princess Leia buns glued to the sides of them. And then I'm also a mom, and I have a 2.5-year-old son, Justin, who's named after Justin Timberlake. And prior to him having his little fallout with the law this past week, so if you hear him in the background, I apologize. I don't have a babysitter, so he's here as well. So here is our opening poll. Lale, can you launch it, please? Are you tired of reviewing and grading the same type of assessments, such as discussions and papers in your asynchronous online classroom or in your live classroom? Are you tired of reading the same types of things over and over again? Andrew, I see your chat. All right, so I'm going to share the results. I hope everybody can see them. So 92% of you said, yes, you are tired of grading the same types of assessments over and over again. Thank you. I'm not alone. Those 8% of you that said no, please tell me why. I need to know. I need to know why. How are you not tired of it? Please share your insights. Okay. So that's why you're here, because the majority of you are looking for something new. So when it comes to assessment, there's two types, summative and formative. Like I said, my program is every 7 weeks, so it's really, really difficult for us to implement formative assessment because our our typical submission cycle runs from most of their things are due on Thursday. They have to do a peer response by Sunday, and then any types of assignments are due Sunday. So by the time I've gotten to look at their work, they're already almost done the next week's assignments. So it's really difficult for that formative assessment piece, which is so important. And I know that from being an elementary middle school teacher, and I've, have a lot of experience using formative assessment, and I know the benefits of it. It's just really difficult to implement that in our schedule. But for any assessments, we know, I'm sorry, I'm trying to see my whole screen, but I have things keep popping up all over. Any task or activity that evaluates students' progress towards your course's learning outcomes. So that's what an assessment is. We know that our assessments should be intentional. We shouldn't just be giving them just to give them. And there is a need to identify effective assessment methods appropriate to online learning, and understanding how this modality changes the selection of our assessment, how we monitor it, and managing the activities that we present. Our assessment should have a clear purpose. We should be incorporating collaboration in our assessment. Just because it's an assessment doesn't mean that it has to be independent. We should also always aim for authenticity. And we should be offering opportunities for autonomy, such as choices around how the students will interact with the material, or how they're going to demonstrate their learning. Everybody doesn't have to be completing the same assessment. They can be demonstrating their learning in various ways. Okay, so these are the strategies that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with a choice board. We're going to talk about role play scenario, peer assessment, video abstracts, interactive presentations, teaching guides and brochures, self-assessment, and case studies. And before I go on to the choice board for the first strategy, I want to tell you exactly how each slide is set up for each strategy. So what I did was I actually copy and pasted the directions from these assignments from our courses and included them, so that while it might look like a lot of text on the screen, and obviously I know that's not proper, presentation etiquette, it's there purposefully, because I want you to see exactly what is said to the student, so that if this is something you want to implement, you kind of have access to that and can adapt it to meet, whatever subject you're doing or whatever your typical assessment looks like. Okay, so you're going to need 2 different reactions throughout the rest of the presentation. You're going to need to use the thumbs up, and you're also going to need to use the light bulb emojis. So if you are unable to find them, I've put some directions here to help us, making sure everybody has access. So first, you're going to click on this reactions button on your screen, like where you see the chat. So if you click on reactions, some of them come up automatically. I don't know if yours will come up the same way, the same ones that mine come up for me. But you're going to look to see if your thumbs up is there, so you know where to find it, and the light bulb. And if one or both are not there, you would click on the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. So once you're on reactions, these 3 dots right here, if you click on them, it opens this screen here. So you can type in the search box thumbs up or light bulb, and then it comes up, and once you click on it, it'll be there in your bar so that you can use it for the rest of the presentation. Okay, so choice board is the first one, and in the Lale is dropping a link in the chat to the choice board so that you can have it open and be looking at it while I'm talking about it. And then you also have it to be able to download and adapt it or use it as is, should you choose to. So I know. So the directions that the students will see if for the choice board is, so choose one option from the 9 choices on the choice board. So there's 9 choices for them, but only 7 weeks in the course. So there's 2 choices that they're never going to have to do. And if you know anything about students always tend to save that one that they really don't want to do to the end. But in this case, they don't ever have to do it. So they have to select a different option in the choice board in the next choice board discussion. So they can't use the same one once they've used it. So I tell them to mark it off, kind of like a bingo board. And then this is for a weekly discussion. So every Thursday, they have to put the prompt that they're picking from their choice board, and then they have to do the response, response accordingly, whatever the choice says. So if you take a look at the choice board, I'm going to try to pull it up. Okay, so there's different, we chose specific strategies. So some of the choices they'll do before they read or watch the resources for the week. Some they'll do while they are reading or watching the resources. And then some of the choices require them to do something after they've read or watched the resources for the week. So here's just an example, stop and jot. While you are reading this week's readings and watching this week's videos, jot down any notes or ideas that spark your thinking from the reading or viewing. You can do this on sticky notes or in a notebook and submit a photo of your notes. So again, for an instructor, maybe 3 people chose this, 2 people chose this choice, other students chose this choice. So from an instructor standpoint, even though all of the content is about the same resources for that week, the way that I'm looking at it and the way students are presenting it is different. So from an instructor standpoint, it's much more enjoyable than reading the same discussion 20 times. So this is the choice board, and it typically fits on 1 page, but Google Docs likes to put it on 2. But if you download it, it will be on 1 page, and you can feel free to make this however you would like or use it as is. I teach in a teacher prep program. Students are coming to get their master's degree in education. So a lot of our, you'll see educator or education in the choices here, but you can easily change that. So if you use the choice board as an assessment strategy, give a thumbs up. And if you don't use the choice board as an assessment strategy, but you would like to implement it, give me a light bulb. And now I have to get my chat back. Yay, lots of light bulbs and thumbs ups. So I saw somebody said how to grade, unsure of how to grade different assignments at different times. So for all of our discussions, we have a discussion rubric. So it doesn't matter the content of the discussion, all of the expectation is always the same. So we use the same rubric. And I can see if I can. I will also attach the discussion rubric for you. Okay, so I just put the discussion rubric in the chat. Again, you can feel free to adapt this to meet your needs. But if you open it, you'll see that it doesn't have specific content in the content section. It's very general. So as long as they've included everything they needed to include for the choice that they chose, then there's no reason for them not to get the full points in the content area. APA is also on the rubric, so they always have to incorporate APA reference section and citations. And then their peer response requirement is also included on the discussion rubric. And I will say that I've used this choice board at every single grade level that I have taught in, from second grade through master's degree, and it works well. You obviously have to teach the students how to use it, depending on the grade that you teach. But once the students know how to use it, you can use it for any subject area. Okay, so I'm going to leave my I'm going to go on to the next one, but this is one of the ones where there's a lot of fonts, so I'll put in present mode again. But again, I wanted you to see exactly what we tell the students in the assignment. So a role play scenario is another assessment that we have been implementing, and this example comes from a course on inclusion and special education. It's like a foundations course that all students in our program have to take, regardless of whether they're pre-K4 or secondary or special ed. So it says, imagine that a meeting has been called to speak with a student's parent about the student needing special education services. You will be assigned to one of the following groups. So one group of students will be a supportive parent group, another group will be a confused parent group, and then another group will be parent in denial. And then within these groups, you will create a script and role play during the meeting. And I will say, I know that students hate group work, but in this case, this is a way to present a real world situation that they will encounter as an educator. So in our program, the only time they ever get into the classroom is at student teaching. They don't have I had a pre-student teaching experience, where I was there, for a semester, not every day like student teaching, but every other day. And we don't have that in our program. So we try to give our students as real, authentic examples as we can for the classroom to help them. So then once I do the assignment, so I assign the groups, and it's the amount of people in the group is always dependent on the amount of students in the class. And then each person they have to assign a role to each person in their group. So one person has to be that specific type of parent that I assign their group. One person has to be the counselor. One person has to be the general education teacher, and one person has to be the special education teacher. And then depending if they have more, enough people, then we include the principal. And then there was one time where I had a very small class. Students needed to take this was their last course to graduate. And we actually only had 5 people in the class, so they were just one group. But typically we have multiple groups. They have to write the script. All group members have to contribute to the script. And when I read the script, all of the following has to be evident. So what type of parent they were has to be evident from their script, how the meeting ended, and how each of the stakeholders felt at the end of the meeting. And then they have to record their meeting with their group and using whatever online meeting platform they want. Everybody has to be visible, because part of this also includes, eye contact and nonverbal communication. And then they have to also write a paragraph reflecting upon the effectiveness of their group's communication skills. So together as a group, they work on the script. Together as a group, they record the video and actually act it out. And then individually, they write their paragraph reflecting upon how their group communicated together to get the assignment done. So if you would like to use this assessment strategy of the role play scenario, and again, you can make up a role play scenario for any subject area. Put a thumbs up if you use this, and a light bulb if you don't, but would like to try it. I do not have a rubric for the role play. And like I said in the beginning, everybody likes to roll their eyes, when it comes to group work, but at the end, there has never been a student who said, like, this wasn't a good, activity, or this wasn't a good assignment, or I didn't get something out of this. And then especially for those parents, for those groups who have a parent, where they really have to like act it out, they can have fun with it. And, some of them have been in situations where there was a lot of, back and forth with the parent. So the part of how the meeting ends is always really, really important as well. I like that. The most annoying person in the group is waiting for them in the real world. Yes, they are. Not everybody gets an A. If they do the work and they're understanding and they're putting in the effort, there's no reason for them not to get the A, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. They come in thinking they're always going to get an A, but that's definitely not the case. Okay, so the next strategy is an interactive presentation. So I don't know about you, but we have presentations in all of our courses, and the amount of time and the boredness that I have of watching 20 presentations about the same thing, of them just reading what's on the slide, is just so daunting, and I couldn't do it anymore. So we made some little tweaks to the presentation information, and made it like they have to make it interactive. So again, here are the instructions that the student sees. So assume you are the special education coordinator who will give a professional development presentation to new faculty. So they have to take on this role. Your presentation should provide guidance on the special education policies and procedures within your school. So that's what their presentation, part of their presentation has to be about. They have to create a multimedia presentation that has full audio narration. And when it says multimedia, I tell them they have to include, audio clips, video clips, other ways that they're incorporating media besides the narration, as they would deliver it to the newly hired special education teachers on how to write a legally defensible IEP based off the Pennsylvania Department of Education videos you watched this week. So they're taking the resources that they had to use, and they're creating this presentation. And they have to include interactive components, and they also have to include, they have to adhere to APA form requirements. So I tell them, when I'm watching your presentation, I want to feel like this new special education teacher. I want you to talk to me like that's who you're talking to. I want you to include activities like think, pair, share, stop and jot, turn and talk. I want you to, build those types of activities in the way you would engage and interact with your audience if you were really presenting this. Wait time, I also talk about wait time, if you're doing an activity, how much time are you giving? All of that should be incorporated. So it's almost like they could take their presentation and virtually, present it to an audience, similar to this situation. The goal is that we want them to be creating things that they could actually use, in the future. So again, we use this type of interactive presentation for, in all of our courses. And like I said, it's just those little tweaks of the interactiveness and taking on the role. So that's something that we adapt for, all of our courses, depending on what what assignment is the presentation. So thumbs up if you use this assessment strategy, light bulb if you don't, but would like to implement it. Yes, they have to stay in the role the entire presentation. So the next strategy is peer assessment. This is also something that we've been incorporating to kind of also take the some of the grading off of us for things, but also giving the students a chance to assess each other at this and at the same time improving their own work. So this is also connected to that interactive presentation. So when a student has to do this interactive presentation in our course, it has two parts. They have to submit a draft of their presentation by Wednesday. And when I say draft, I tell them draft just means you're going to get a chance to revise it and make it better. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't have all of the required components. So they submit that first version of the presentation to the discussion forum so their peers can see it. And then for the peer assessment, they have to review one of their classmates' presentations and provide constructive feedback on both the content of the presentation as well as the delivery. And they have until Friday to do that. And then once they receive their feedback from their peer, they have 2 days to revise it and improve the presentation before they submit the final version on Sunday to me. So there would be no way for me to be able to give them that formative assessment like they're getting from their peer and watch them all again as the final. So this is a way to kind of take some pressure off of the instructor, but also give them that autonomy of assessing their peer and giving them that experience of doing that. And majority of the time they listen to what their peers say before they listen to what I say. So we found this to be very valuable. And again, it's a discussion. So we use that same discussion rubric. So their peer response is on there. You know, they get graded for the draft that they turned in. So again, we continually use that same discussion rubric. So if you use peer feedback and peer assessment in your courses, thumbs up. And if you don't use peer assessments and you would like to implement them, light bulb. And again, this is easily adaptable to any type of assessment. Yes, draft definitely had to be clearly defined because in the beginning, students were just, submitting an outline of their presentation. And, I have to really explain that every single time that that's not the point. The point is that you're submitting the real deal that you think is the real deal, in an opportunity to get feedback before you turn it in to me. Because only I can see their assignments, but a discussion they're all able to see. Somebody asked a good question. I'm going to drop another file in the chat. So when we do our all of their peer assessments, at peer feedback, it doesn't matter whether it's an assessment or not, they have to use the RISE model. So I just put that in the chat. This is something across our university and across our whole program that we use. So each response that they do has to have all 4 of these components. They have to have a reflection, they have to have an inquiry, they have to have a suggestion, and they have to have an elevation. So in their R component, they're reflecting upon, what their peer said. In the I component, they're asking some kind of question that they have about what their peer said. or what they watched if it was a presentation. For the S component, they're giving a suggestion. And this is also something I have to talk about with the students because they often think that, well, if everything is good, then I don't have a suggestion. And I have to tell them that suggestion doesn't mean you're giving a suggestion doesn't mean that something was bad. It just means that you're giving them another idea. Whether it's based on your experience or just your thought or something maybe you read or watched. And then the E is elevation. And this is the component I would say that students struggle with the most, which is why they're provided with the same document that I gave you. So on that document, there are sample sentence starters, and I tell them, use the sample sentence starters to start off each component, because that will help you make sure that you're accurately including, here, bud, Justin, that you're accurately including that component. So the E is for elevation. And the point of that is how can they help their peer take whatever work they're reviewing to the next level? So like I said, that's always the challenging part for them. So that's on the discussion rubric in the peer response section. It'll say, you know, for proficient, they had to have accurately included all 4 components of the RISE model. And then it moves on from there. I believe the website for the RISE model is on the file that I included in the chat. Okay, so moving on to the next assessment strategy is video abstract. This is something new that fairly new that within, I would say, the past year and a half, we've incorporated into some of our courses. And we've done this through working with an instructional designer on some course revisions. So again, you can use this for anything. If you know that an abstract, you know, is kind of like a summary, like in the beginning of a paper, this is a video version. So in this class, in this assignment, students would have to choose an article that discusses diversity and special education. And they can choose more than one article. That's up to them. And they're going to create a video abstract demonstrating your understanding of diversity and special education based on the chosen article. And they have to include a comprehensive abstract. They have to include 3 takeaways from the article, and they have to include any questions that they still have regarding that topic. And I tell them they have to be visible. You know, there's a video presentation rubric, which I could include, and they have to be visible. You know, we have to see them. And it's, again, from the instructor standpoint, having to read everything as opposed to having to sit and watch them and listen to them talk. It gives a very different feel, and it's just a different, you know, it keeps things fresh, in my opinion. And these are not very long. These are, you know, a couple minutes. Again, they're giving a comprehensive abstract of the article. It's, you know, a summary of, you know, the main points and then what they took away from it and any questions they still have. So if you do use video abstract, thumbs up. If you don't, but would like to, light bulb, please. So I just put in the rubric for the video abstract. I will also share, I didn't think to share, I do also have a presentation rubric. So for that interactive presentation we talked about, this would be the rubric that we use for that. So it's different than the video rubric. Okay, the next strategy is teaching guides and brochures. Again, this is something that can be easily adapted to any subject area. So here are the instructions for the assignment. And again, they're assuming a role kind of like that presentation. So to help build a supportive relationship with your fellow teachers at the beginning of the new school year, you decide to create a flyer about the importance of positive teacher-student relationships to distribute in their mailboxes or via email. So this is also giving them another opportunity for a choice. They can create a physical handout that they would physically put in the teachers' mailboxes, or they could be creating a digital handout, which gives a lot more opportunity to include a lot more resources, and they would distribute that via email. They would create a flyer that addresses the following questions. What do you think are the key components of a positive teacher-student relationship? What are 2 strategies you could use to encourage a positive teacher-student relationship who has ongoing behavior concerns? And why do you think these would be effective? So that's the content of the flyer, and they can design it however they choose, using whatever they choose. And they have to include cited support with an accompanying reference section. And, students sometimes question, well, why do I have to include references? Why? And I'm like, because if whoever's reading this wants more information than what you provided on the handout, they know exactly where to go to get it. And then usually when I say that, they're like, oh, okay. So thumbs up if you use this type of assessment, light bulb if you don't, but would like to implement it. And again, this is something that when they create it, I tell them, like, my goal is that you actually get to distribute this, in the future to your future colleagues. So I tell them, you should be creating a digital portfolio, saving, things that you do that like this that you can use. I also make a lot of our assignments, like this would be an assignment, but we use Canvas, and in Canvas, I would actually create this as a discussion so that when students submit it, they can see each other's and they can look at each other's. They don't have to do a peer response. It's strictly for the purpose of having access to each other's. Something when I was a student, that was really beneficial to me was when we had to write lesson plans, we had to bring copies of lesson plans to all of our classmates. So I used to leave a class, on any given day with a stack full of lesson plans that a lot of them I actually did get to use. I may have had to change, some things in it, but I didn't have to start from scratch. And that's the point that I'm trying to help, with the students here. The next strategy, assessment strategy is peer assessment, self-assessment, I'm sorry. And again, this can be done with anything, but one area that we use self-assessment in is APA format. So in our courses, we have a self-assessment where students have to rate themselves in week 1 before they get any type of resources or any assignments that include APA. And then they take the same one again at the end of the course. And the goal is that they've at least been able to move themselves over one column in at least one area, and they have to do a little two question reflection on the one at the end of the course. So I just dropped that in the chat as well, the APA self-assessment, if you wanted to see that. And when I grade this is graded for completion. This is not graded on, how the students answer. So thumbs up if you use self-assessment, light bulb if you don't, but would like to implement self-assessment. And then our last strategy that I'm going to share is case studies. And this is something that is another way that we're trying to give students that real authentic situation that they might be in. So in our program, we have, like I said before, pre-K4 students, secondary students, and special education students. And then we have students who are also just getting their master's because they are already a teacher. So I have them choose whatever area is most, important for them. So they would choose one certification area and review all the associated case studies. If you are in a non-certification program, review the case studies in the area that match your certification interest. And there are the 3 areas. And then there's an activity that they have to complete. And this was designed with our multimedia team. So it's not just a black and white, answer. They actually have to click through an activity to complete it. And what I really like about it, it looks like this. I'm going to show you. This is what it looks like for students. So if they chose pre-K 4, they have 5 case studies that they can pick from. They have to read all 5 before the activity will allow them to choose one. So again, giving them a choice. Secondary students would see this. They have 4 choices to pick from. And then the special education students have 3 case studies to pick from. So everybody has to read all of their chosen certification area, but then they only have to pick one to actually complete. And each case study, presents a different situation. So the questions are specific to the actual case study. So that's really difficult for me to share because each one is different. But that's another way to assess how they would implement the skills that they're learning in the course for that week. So thumbs up if you use case studies, and light bulb if you don't but would like to. I found that sometimes you can find pumpkins. Sometimes you can find case studies that are relevant, on the internet. It's kind of better than having to start from scratch, but then sometimes you can't and you have to write your own. And this is an assessment that I would say takes a lot of that front loading time before you can actually implement it because you need all the case studies. And I believe Lale put some examples of the case studies that we use for this in the chat. And then I have a Padlet here. I believe Lale will put the link to the Padlet in the chat for us to wrap up. What is one assessment strategy you will strive to implement in your current or next course? So just one. We went through so many, but what is just one assessment strategy you would like to implement this semester or next semester? I don't know about you, but we never get a break. So every semester just flows into the next one. And I'm going to open that so we can all see it. Okay, so we have case studies, scenarios with the help of AI, video abstract, case studies, video, RISE model, choice boards, interactive presentation, self-assessment. So something for everybody. Yay. I provided something for everybody to use. Any questions? Lale, is there any time for questions or?
Yeah, we have some
tried to speak through that last part.
Of course, we have some questions, and actually I'm gonna stop sharing so we can kind of see, but there was a question from Arvin saying, what's your strategy to ensure that every student receives peer feedback?
I tell that it hasn't really happened. I will say the only time it happens is if a student doesn't do their peer response, which, I can't force the student to do the work. They get the points taken off or they, get a 0 for it. But if that happens, I try to provide them with some feedback, or I may not, if I don't catch it in time. Like a lot of times a student will say like, I didn't get any feedback, will reach out to me. But if they don't, and I don't catch it in time before that Sunday, then I just don't take points off in that specific area. That maybe, instead of taking the points off, it's just the feedback that I give them on the rubric.
Perfect. Yeah, a little kind of empathy, and just, yeah, a lot of folks also give students kind of a one-time option out they can claim during the term.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and I always try to say,
Mhm.
like, make sure you're responding to somebody new every week, in my weekly announcements, to try to make sure that they're not always responding to
Yeah,
the same person.
awesome. Vera was asking if you had any ideas for using peer assessment in mathematics classes. Tend to be a little different.
I don't teach
Yeah.
math, but
Yeah.
I mean, you can have them assess anything. I mean, if you have them do a prop, we used to do this in elementary. So I don't know if it would apply to you, but maybe you pose them with a problem for whatever, topic you're working on, and you have the students complete the problem independently, and then you have them partner with a peer, and you have them look over each other's problem and talk about it before you either have somebody share it with the whole class, or before you share, the actual
Yeah.
answer or process.
Yeah. And I'll jump in here. Actually, I was in my statistics for linguistics courses, which is math adjacent. I had a lot of folks review like the top common kind of errors that everyone used to do. So as a group, we would first identify them, and then I would put them in groups as a peer to see, can you find one of these common errors in your peers' examples? So that's one way.
Yeah, that's a good, yep.
Just for the math. Awesome. Mark was asking that in his classes, I think a lot of peer feedback is, you did a great job, yay, hearts. How do you get students to provide more substantive feedback?
That's why we use the RISE model,
Yeah.
because that's what we were getting, that same thing too. And
Yeah.
and even with the RISE models, some students will still put that in the in the E component and say, oh, you did such a great job, thanks for sharing. And there are some students where I have to say the same thing every week on the rubric. Please use the sample sentence starters to make sure you're accurately including the E component in your response. And they don't get the full points, for that. They might get, whatever that competent section of our rubric is. But I do continually try to make sure that I'm holding everybody accountable for their responses, as well as their own individual work for the content.
Perfect. And one more question came in from Kaylee. When you use video abstracts, do students share them with the entire class, or is this something you review only?
Both. We have it set up for both in different courses. I think it depends on your purpose for using the video abstract. So in the example that I showed here in this presentation, that was an assignment, so only I got to see that. But we also have it set up in one of our teacher research courses. So students have to go through the action research process, and then instead of actually having to write the paper at the end, they do a video abstract for it. So that would be something that's something that's set up again as that discussion, purposely just so that everybody has access to it. And so if they want to watch someone else's, they can, but they don't have to do peer responses or anything like that.
Perfect.
I still would grade it the same way, but students get access to it.
Awesome. Perfect. Desiree, thank you so much. This was packed full of ideas. As someone commented, I think there was a little bit for everyone. And as a reminder for folks, tomorrow we start again at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So Pacific, make sure to check what that is in your own time zone. There will be another day full of sessions. I am in the chat posting again Desiree's session slides, as well as all the resources that were mentioned. They're all in a doc neatly for you. Feel free to edit, modify. We're teachers and scrappy, and we use things from each other's classrooms. Thank you so much, Desiree, for a fantastic session, and I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lale.